Bloomburrow is about to be released, and with each new set, a new smattering of cards that make an impact in Commander. Lots of people like to update their current Commander decks with each set, and so it's worth it to go through the new cards and find out which ones may be worth picking up, or keeping your eye on to upgrade your lists. These are Bloomburrow cards you should keep an eye on for the 99. First up is Beza, Bounding Spring. Beza helps you catch up on pretty much everything if an opponent has more of something than you. It's like a one-time Battle Angels of Tyr trigger that can also make tokens. Beza has an above-rate body and can give you repeatable value in decks that can blink or reanimate it repeatedly. It gives temporary ramp and card draw, something white can always use. Next is Dragonhawk, Fate's Tempest. Dragonhawk is a great card for Stompy decks, giving you access to extra cards, increased by the number of Stompy creatures in play, and if you can't play them or don't want to, gives you a possibly sizable amount of damage to each opponent every turn. Stompy decks, particularly Gruul and Rakdos ones, can have a hard time maintaining card advantage while attacking aggressively. Dragonhawk lets you do both. Kitsa, Otterball Elite, is one of the cheapest permanents that allow you to copy spells, a very powerful ability. It's also a perfectly serviceable prowess creature with vigilance that lets you attack while it's pumped and still use a tap ability to loot or copy a spell. Storm playstyles have been really pushed by WotC lately, and this otter can fit in a Narset or Stella Lee deck easily. Speaking of Storm, Ral, Crackling Wit seems very powerful, able to maybe use its ultimate the turn you play it. Casting a non-creature spell is an immensely easy thing to do a lot of, especially when it counts artifacts. Fast mana rocks and rituals can power a huge turn without much trouble, and once Ral ultimates, any burn spell can take out one or more opponents pretty quickly. The Season cycle are all somewhat playable and may find spots in your decks. Season of Gathering can wipe all artifacts and enchantments at the same rate as a Bane of Progress, with a little something left over, or act like a Return of the Wild Speaker, and another option. 6 mana is a tough spot to be in your curve, but it's certainly playable. Season of the Bold can ramp you and give you Impulse Draw, two things that are amazing for red, which is pretty hard up for both. It can also be creature removal for a Spellslinger deck, but I think I'm more interested in the first two modes. This is a card that I'll definitely give a try. Season of the Burrow is 5/1/1s, the same rate as Increasing Devotion, or Double Exile removal, or some combination of both. The flexibility of being either or both may nudge out Increasing Devotion in tokens decks, or maybe redundancy. The third mode feels just fine, but I'm sure there are some combo pieces people would like to return and have be indestructible. Season of Weaving looks very powerful. It's a blue mass bounce spell that can leave you with an artifact or creature on board first. Symmetrical Wraths have the downside of your opponents being able to rebuild first in turn order, but this can get around that problem. Or if you're playing a token deck, you can make it very one-sided. Double copying a permanent is great, and drawing cards for any pause you didn't use is great too. Storm Splitter is a deceptively powerful storm finisher. It makes a token copy each time you cast a non-creature spell, and the copies do too. 5 spells is already 32 power with haste. Any decently sized storm count will finish off opponents very easily. If you see this otter, use a removal spell. Artist's Talent is very good filtering for just 2 mana for artifact or spellslinger decks. It's the first mode of Ashling Flame Dancer for half the price. These class cards really need to be playable with just their first mode, or the first and second mode have to be really cheap mana-wise to make them playable. This one's first mode may be a powerful boon to find your key spells and fill your graveyard. Caretaker's Talent is a bomb with just its first mode. It's the same effect as Benny Brack's Zoologist, except you don't have to wait until the end step for the card. This card would be very powerful and playable if it was just the first mode, but once you play it, you have Awake the Reflections that can copy non-creature tokens too. This card is the real deal. Darkstar Augur has a lot of potential since it can draw you 2 extra cards each turn for 4 mana. Dark Confidant effects are very risky in Commander since your decks tend to have higher curves than 60 card formats, but the card advantage is very powerful either way. I don't think I would play this outside of a deck that had plenty of life gain, but it'll be a bomb there. White is getting a bit saturated with board protection spells, and here's another. Dawn's Truce is a counterspell for targeted removal, but mostly I think it'll just be a heroic intervention that gives an opponent a card. That's mostly a downside, but in the political world of Commander, the gift mechanic can be an upside. If you make deals with opponents, or need to team up with someone against the archenemy, helping an opponent can help you too. Fountain Port is a trading post that I'd actually want to play. It provides card advantage to token decks in colors that don't have consistent draw, or can make you creatures or treasures when playing a deck that needs to leave its mana open, for instance. Utility lands have to be pretty good with the amount of competition they have now, but this one even makes 1/1s at a better rate than Castle Ardenvale. Home run, I love this card. I'm not too sure about Hearthborn Battler since the power and toughness is a little iffy, but being able to shock opponents whenever any player plays their second spell can probably add up pretty quickly. We've seen how often it happens with Ledger Shredder, and I don't think it's too hard to imagine this doing 8 to 10 damage before it inevitably gets removed. I think this one deserves testing. Innkeeper's Talent looks playable for +1/+1 counter decks. It provides counters at the same rate as Luminarch Aspirant for the same mana value, but isn't a creature, which can be a bad thing if you don't have something to put the counters on, or a good thing if your board gets wrathed. For 3 mana total, you can get the first effect, and give all your permanents with counters Ward 1, which is decent board-wide protection. And for 7 total mana, you get all that, but also can double the counters you put on permanents or players. Yes, that includes poison counters on opponents. I don't think 7 mana split up is that bad either, considering people still play Doubling Season. Withered Wretch, but with a much bigger body, makes Keen-Eyed Curator great for green. Green does have Graveyard Hate, but not much playable and at instant speed. And you really want access to instant speed graveyard removal, because sorcery speed removal doesn't interrupt Spore Frog locks. I think the Curator will be decent tech and may fit into aggro or stompy decks for extra utility. Osteomancer Adept is a toned down Underworld Breach, but the ability is still very powerful. It's pretty powerful and repeatable recursion that can be fueled easily with self-mill or food tokens, which are everywhere nowadays. You can probably put together janky combos with cards that can remove the finality counters too, but giving your creatures double life to attack and block is already powerful, as seen with Kethis. Sunspine Lynx is one of my favorite cards of the set. It turns off life gain and is half a price of progress when it enters. It's beefy enough for stompy decks and is a great repeatable effect in decks that can blink it or make copies of it. Players have a bad habit of packing their decks with way too many utility lands that they never even activate, and this is a great way to punish bad deck building. Three Tree City will probably be an in-demand auto-include for typal decks for some time. It's basically a Nixthos Shrine to Nyx for creature types, and I can't imagine very many players who wouldn't want one. If you pull one or find it cheap, keep it. It's going to be very expensive and I doubt they'll reprint it anytime soon. Thundertrap Trainer is basically Impulse on a body, and the 4 cards it digs in your deck outclasses a lot of other cantrip creatures in blue. The Offspring ability costs a lot, and it won't be worth it to pay 6 unless you really don't have anything else going on. The 2 mana version is pretty good by itself though, and can even be a way for Spellslinger decks to not be attacked freely early game. Valley Floodcaller has combo potential, being half a Jeskai Ascendancy for certain creature types. Untap abilities are very powerful, and with creatures with tap effects, or cards that grant them to creatures, you can probably put together an infinite or almost infinite combo. Vren the Relentless is so powerful that it'll be a pretty easy inclusion in the 99 decks on top of being a powerful new commander. It has Ward 2, which is pretty great protection. It has Graveyard Hate, like a Kalidas Trader of Get, and makes a bunch of creatures that scale in size with the number of creatures you make. Armies in a can are always powerful, and singleton formats love cards that can put in work all by themselves. Watch out for this card. Whiskervale Forerunner is a card advantage engine for heroic style decks that has the new wording that triggers off of spells and abilities. And targeting things with abilities is exceptionally easy. You can get the trigger 4 times a turn cycle with things like Shaman and Core for no mana. The ability also puts the creature you find on the battlefield for free on your turn, so it's drawing you cards and saving you mana. Blacksmith's Talent gives you a dinky equipment to increase your artifact count for 1 mana, and for 4 mana total it can equip a creature for free each of your turns. 4 mana split up isn't that bad for cheating equip costs. Decks already pay that rate for similar effects. Equipment deck lists are often pretty tight already, but this might make the cut, especially in mono red. Coruscation Mage isn't a huge power creep, but with the flexibility to be a 2-drop that deals 1 like Kessig Flamebreather, or a 4-drop that deals 2 like a Gutter Snipe but is triggered by more things, it may just be better than all those other options. It works twice as well with damage increasers also, since it's 2 triggers instead of 1. Dewdrop Cure is another copy of Proclamation of Rebirth, but can return more options since it cares about mana value 2 or less instead of 1. These cards work amazing in life gain decks with Soul Sisters and Martyr of Sands, and I can see it being wanted for that type of deck. Harnesser of Storms is an amazing enabler for red Spellslinger decks, an archetype that really has to lean into storm-style strategies to function. This card allows red decks a little bit more consistent card advantage turn after turn, and rewards you for playing instants. This is a card I'll definitely test out for Spellslinger decks that aren't blue. Mind Whisker is one of the best Surveil enablers for decks like Mirko Obsessive Theorist, and the Threshold ability is easy to activate in Commander. A free Cumberstone will do a lot of work. It makes most tokens useless and can give your creatures the edge in combat. It disincentivizes attacks and can help you hold out for even more Surveil value. I remember when Glorious Anthem was a tournament playable card, and now Typal decks get it for colorless mana with the Mana Rock attached for free. Patchwork Banner is a decent, almost free Mana Rock for Typal decks that I think a good amount will want. Token decks often play Heraldic Banner, so this will probably make sense for go-wide Typal decks. Shoreline Looter is an upgraded Looter El Core that can even block. It loots until you have Threshold, and then it's a better Shadow Mage Infiltrator. Sorry, John. This is a great addition to all the decks that care about combat damage triggers or small evasive attackers. This could see a lot of play. Move over, Goblin Electromancer. Wizards does not appreciate your many years of loyal service. Stormcatch Mentor is almost a strict upgrade, but not quite as good or ubiquitous as Thunderclap Drake should be. But about the third best Goblin Electromancer is still pretty good, and can add redundant cost reduction beaters to Prowess style decks. Wear Down seems like it could see play, as one of, if not the cheapest ways to destroy 2 artifacts or enchantments. The card you have to gift doesn't even have to go to the players whose permanents you destroyed, so a 2 mana double removal spell might see more play than we might expect just reading the card. Heaped Harvest is a great common, rampant growthing on entry, and when you sack it. It doesn't have to sack to its own ability to get the effect, so if you have a sack outlet, it can be a 3 mana explosive vegetation. While not competing well against the 2 mana ramp spells, this can find a home in decks that care about artifacts, sacking permanents, or food-focused decks. Sazakap's Brew is another Thrilla possibility, but with upside. With 3 instant speed versions of this effect, it's going to be a hard sell for a Tormenting Voice and its clones to make it into deck lists. Sazakap's Brew is a strict upgrade for all of these. That's it for today, but what do you all think? Are there cards I missed that have a lot of potential in the 99? Am I overrating any of these cards? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, give it a like and subscribe to be notified when more Magic content comes out. Have a great rest of your day.